So what I'm doing here is peeling the bark off these logs, which are going to be the vertical support logs. The reason I'm peeling the bark off is because it prevents bugs from getting inside the bark and burrowing and eating away at the wood inside, which essentially rots it a lot quicker. So what it's doing is just preventing bugs, prolonging the lifespan of the log itself. If I left the bark on, the bugs would get inside, they would eat it, and eventually it would rot away because water would get in it and things like that. And it makes logs last a lot longer when the bark's peeled. And this is a little jig, a peeling jig that I set up while we were building the Saxon house behind me. It was one of the first things I did before we started constructing the Saxon house, because we knew that with all the rafters and with all the wall posts in the frame that we'd need to peel the logs. And it can be quite tricky when you have them on the ground up in the air or leaning up against a tree and pulling down. We custom made this so that it's perfectly waist height. I don't have to bend my back over too much, and I can just lean back and let the draw knife do all of the work. Essentially it's really easy. It's just two vertical posts. One has a kind of U-shape cut out of it, which I use the chisel to just chisel away that U-shape. And obviously the thicker the log you go here, the bigger the diameter of log you can have with this. So that log then sits nice and flush in that hole, and at the other end is just a V, and then that's just supporting it. And then we've nailed in these diagonals here just to stop it from rocking, so it's totally solid. So all you need to do is, as you peel here and the knife bites into the wood, it's going to send the log back that way, and normally your log would just slip off if it was just on a standard sawhorse. But because it's butted up against this section, it can't slip off that way, so it allows the knife to bite so that you can lean right back and lean into it and peel the bark really easily without having to readjust the log. And then when I need to rotate the log, I can just keep it in the jig and just twist it like that, and then it rotates to get the bark on the top so that I can peel away there. It's very old. This is kind of an old English traditional thing that bodgers would have done in like a bodgers woodland, just general roundwood timber framing. Years ago, this is how they would have done it. Makes life a lot easier. I found when I'm peeling logs, it's easier to use your body weight rather than your kind of arms. You'd use this sort of technique for more finesse work, but when you're doing fairly substantial and bigger logs, it's much easier to just get your body weight there and then just lean back and almost just use your back more than your arms. Just pull back last minute. It's just from, I don't know, just a technique I've picked up that makes it easier as the longer strokes rather than lots of small strokes. Try and get nice big long strokes and lean into it. I've found it helps a lot easier anyway. Good to be back out in the woods. This is it's going to be a fairly simple structure, but the practicality of it down the line is going to really pay dividends when it's peeing with rain and I want to do some carving. It's going to be great. Good addition to the camp. So here's a great example of, I've just peeled off this bit of bark here, and this little pattern, this swirly pattern, is an example of what the bugs can do to the woods. The wood, this is where they've eaten away at the inner wood, and they're obviously living under the bark like that. And what happens is water then gets in there as well, gets more deeper into the wood and rots it a lot quicker. So by removing this bark, this outer layer, obviously that's got, but you can see it's not deep where the bugs have been, but just removing that smoothens it off and lets the water run off easy. It doesn't sit in there and rot away. So, I mean, this one's not rotten, luckily. There's only a few bugs that have been in it. But ideally you want a log that's not been touched by the bugs. But that was an example of the pattern of what they make as you peel the bark off. I've brought Dad along with me. He's slaving away in the background with the shovel. And for this part, we're going to be basically building, I don't know, what we're going to call it, a carving shack? Carving shack.
Woodwork.
It's basically a woodworking / carving shack. What's that? Well, it's going to be a little bit of a lean-to with some walls on it, where I don't really have an area here at the camp where I do any wood carving. Obviously I've got plenty of shelters, but nothing that's actually built specifically for wood carving, and it's nice to have somewhere that's a little bit undercover so that when it rains, which it does here in the UK a lot, I have somewhere to be able to carve wood, do little wood crafting projects and everything like that. So this is the kind of carving shack series. It's only going to be a short one because it shouldn't take too long to build. And then once we've got at the moment we're doing the frame, so we've got the vertical posts up, and then we'll do the rest of the wall posts and the other frames. Once we've got the shack together, I'm going to start to create some items that will be used for wood carving in the shack itself. For example, a shaving horse, just a kind of chopping log axe section where I can do carving spoons. I've not done much carving on the channel at all over the years, and it's something I'd like to feature a bit more on the channel, and hopefully you guys will enjoy some of that. But that's all it's going to be, a carving shack. I hope you guys will enjoy this series. We've got the fire going, so we've burnt the bottom of the posts at the moment to prevent, like I said earlier, prevent all the bugs from rotting away, eating away at the wood and rotting it away. But also where it rains, it just prevents that water ingress coming into the base of the posts. We've burnt them about, what would you say, Dad, 18 inches above the ground there as well? That bit,
15.
just because when the rain hits the ground, it still splashes up when it's saturated, so you get that black splash, dare I say it, up the post. So that's what we're doing. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the episode, and we'll catch up with you guys when we've made a bit more progress. So what I'm doing is just we're building this up in layers. So I've dug the holes around about probably 20 inches, I think it was. By the way, guys, we mix from imperial to metric all the time. I don't know why. It's what you've done.
Yeah,
you've taught me this. Everyone says, why are you using
inches?
Imperial? Yeah, and why are you not using metric? I switch between the two because Dad had ever since I was a kid. I don't know why you did. Why did you switch from the two?
That's what he taught me at school.
What, so you learnt imperial at school? You learnt inches at school?
Inches at school, and then at about, whatever it was, 14, it all went out my head because it was football, girls and motorbikes. So obviously I didn't learn any metric.
So that's weird. So obviously then what, England had changed more to start doing
Well, it was
metric.
all metric, all Europe's metric, wasn't it? Yeah.
That's weird, isn't it?
But I'm still feet in inches, yeah.
So whereas I was brought up mostly on metric, the metric system, still learnt imperial, but mostly everything was metric, and now I'm using bloody both. Hold on, that's fine. Yeah. So what we're doing, guys, is we're building up layers. As you can see, the further you dig down, the more you get to the clay layer and the gravel layer. So essentially, we want that clay to be going down first, because that's where it came up from. It was the last thing that was dug up. But we pack it a bit, 3 or 4 inches, then you compress it down with a stick, and clay is squidgy and it compresses really well. And that gives these vertical logs a real solid foundation. If I poured all this pile in at once and then compressed it down, it's not going to be as strong right at the base. It's going to be compacted at the top and kind of fluffy and soft at the bottom, and it's not good, and it will allow it to rock and move over time. So we just compress it in about 3 different layers, isn't it?
Yeah.
In different stages. And you just use the flat end of a stick. You feel it go solid. And when you get about halfway like that, we just check that everything's roughly in line before we go any further and put more in. So many of my shelters in the woods have started with this type of foundation. Now you guys over across the pond, you might have some very hard bedrock and not be able to dig down like this, in which case you've got to think of putting a rock kind of foundation and building up above the ground rather than digging down.
They probably wouldn't need to do the burning.
Probably not, actually, yeah, because you wouldn't be burying it in the ground. It's only because we're burying in the ground that we burn it. I think I started doing this way back in that hunting tower, Dad, at Bushcraft.
Yeah, it probably was a hunting tower,
Camp Update 11. Who remembers that?
In amongst the
That's-
tree roots and horrible
Yeah.
gravel.
That is old school subscribers. If you remember Camp Update 11.
Some of the originals.
The originals, yeah, the OGs. Yeah. Dad's got a human tape measure plan here.
Yes, what we used to do years ago was the soldier's way. Like this. Get it to your head. I go right, top of my head. Leave the salute in place.
Roger.
And there you go. Roger, Wilco, and over to you, Mike, with that digging.
Right. So we're getting towards the end of the first stage of this build, and what we've done is I've just put some small notches, simple sort of saddle notches, sometimes a square notch if it's gone wrong, but put some small notches on these rafters up the top here, just so that they can sit there and they're not going to wobble and slide around. The next thing we're doing at the moment is putting up what's called these wind braces really. So Dad's put a 45-degree angle on these, and they're going to sit on the inside of the wood. One's going to go there, one's going to go there, and essentially what that does is every time the wind blows this shelter, because it's not got any triangle shapes in it yet to give it rigidity, these give it some rigidity so that it stops it racking, I think it's called. It'll stop it going one way and then the other way and just working loose these vertical posts. So essentially it spreads the force towards the other post, which will have these on as well. So it's just creating those strong triangle shapes to give it a bit more rigidity. And it's really not that time consuming, is it?
No.
To
Short
get
pieces,
these.
offcuts we've been using.
Yeah, exactly. Offcuts of these rafters.
Yeah.
So it's working well. We're almost done with the frame, to be honest. So let's get these up and then we'll see where we're at. Well, folks, we have hit the end of the day and we're going to wrap this episode up where it is. You can see in the background for scale, that's what the size of the shelter is going to be. We're probably going to have to put, or we might, we're not sure yet, a middle support in there, just because there's quite a lot of length along that horizontal front beam that's, once the roof's put together, it's going to potentially sag in the middle, especially when there's rain. We're not too sure on what to do for roofing material yet. We might just do a simple tarp and then some debris and dirt and bracken and things on top, just so that it's not as ugly seeing the tarp. Obviously the tarps aren't bushcraft as such, but they're definitely waterproof, and we'd like that place to be as waterproof as possible. We've got the walls still to do, and we won't tell you what we're doing with those just yet, but you'll see that coming up. And hopefully in the next part of this series it should be finished, and then we can start working on the things, that the tools and the items that we're going to put on the inside, where we can begin wood carving, crafting, all sorts of things like that. So a little bit of content that's different to the norm of the channel, but it also is a great addition to the camp. So thank you all for watching so much. Dad's just having his cup of tea. He's busted. Look, it's bushcraft tea over here.
I'm ruined. I'm ruined. There's nothing like flask tea.
It's horrible, Dad.
Especially when you've borrowed it and put cocoa or hot chocolate in it.
No, I didn't do that.
We had so much because we were chasing the weather. We thought we won't bother with the fire. We're just going to crack on and build it, and that's what we've done.
Well, that's what you take fishing, isn't it? A flask of tea. You can't go wrong. Well, it's not the nicest tasting thing.
No, not late in the day. It's not. No. But taste change when I get home. It's a beer.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.